One of the best fantasy football fits for the top running backs in the 2023 NFL Draft, including Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. It's time to break it down right here, right now, as we begin another edition and close another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. A lot of good draft stuff for you on the site. I got my top 140 prospects there, the big board overall, as well as the positional rankings going really deep. And then we put them into a blender and have our 7-round mock draft going strong there. We will explore mock draft with trades there for you on Monday at Sporting News. Here on Locked On Fantasy Football, we've been talking draft. We looked at the quarterback landing spots for the top 5 there with what might happen with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson and Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. Now we're going to look at the top 10 running backs led by Bijan Robinson, the clear-cut favorite out of Texas, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, the clear-cut number 2 out of Alabama, and look at also the 8 guys behind them in my rankings and where they might end up. That would give them some fantasy football intrigue, either short-term or long-term here in our season. So we'll break it all down for you. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first day. Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's dive right into Bijan Robinson. We'll give our first segment all to him. That's how special of a back Bijan is here out of Texas. Really a great 3-down workhorse. He's not the only Texas back we'll be talking about on today's show. Just a complete package as a running back. Has power, big play ability, speed, quickness, vision, anything you want, determination, toughness, nimble on his feet for 5'11", 215 pounds. He can also catch passes and be dangerous there in the open field. So there's everything Robinson can do for sure. So he profiles as a feature back. Some have him as a top 10 overall talent in this draft. Some have him as a top 5 overall talent. He's right in that range to me. Now it's the question of what team can have that luxury of that first-round running back. And that's what it is, a bit of a luxury pick. But Bijan can solve your backfield issues for quite a while. So let's look at 2 teams in particular that I think would get the most benefit out of him. And these are teams that you would think on the surface might have their backfields wrapped up here for 2023. So the best 2 fits in fantasy for me, the Lions, they're picking twice on the clock. I have them right now taking him in my mock draft. I know they added Devon Montgomery, but Montgomery's just a bit of a plotter. He replaced Jamal Williams. So they couldn't keep Williams. He moved on to the Saints. You have also DeAndre Swift, but he's just not a durability, trustworthy guy at this point. So look at Bijan Robinson. You plug him beyond that Lions offensive line. You have Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell out the tackles. The interior is pretty strong with Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow. You plug him in there, and he's going to be very productive. We know this is also a dangerous offense overall, so there'll be balance in the pass game. Downfield stretching is going to be a little bit better with James Williams in the mix. They also added Marvin Jones, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So receiving core is going to spread the field a little bit, open up those lanes, and then have a deep threat, which is also going to keep safeties at bay here. So Bijan Robinson would just crush it as a Lions starting running back. And keep in mind the production of Jamal Williams. He finished as an RB1 because of the rushing touchdown. So factor that in, what DeAndre Swift did as a receiver. And Robinson, he's going to be treated as a workhorse if he goes to Detroit. There's no question about that. They're going to give him the ball often. When you use a first-round pick on a running back, I think you'll kind of give away their usage here. And Montgomery and Swift are okay, but Robinson can put them over the top. Montgomery could be a swing backup, and Swift the occasional change of pace or get him more involved as a receiver in certain sets here. But they're just not happy with his durability. He just doesn't stay available. He has been a good talent, but again, Just a guy that is slight of frame, gets hurt quite a bit. Bijan Robinson, sturdy back. He's going to stay healthy. He's going to be productive. Now, the other team I look at here, and a lot of people look at him with the Cowboys, but not now with Tony Pollard returning here. I don't think they're going to invest highly in a pure feature running back, even though he is from Texas, and they're situated there right in the middle of Dallas, Arlington. So when you look at that, I think the best fit is the Buccaneers here. Rachaad White is an okay running back, but keep in mind we have Dave Canales, the new offensive coordinator, changing the direction here to run heavier scheme. That means pass catching is okay as a running back, but you want that power production here. So I could see the Bucs going for Robinson as well in the middle of the first round and just say, look, we're going to give this guy the rock. And Canales comes from a team that had a great second-round pick in Kenneth Walker. It worked out really well because Rashad Penny went on the shelf. Walker really carried that Seahawks offense from mid-season down the stretch, really opened up the passing game for Geno Smith. So I think there's going to be some envisioning of that as well because you got great receivers there in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So you get a running game to set those guys up. They moved on from Leonard Fournette. So playoff Lenny's gone. They need a power runner as well. White is okay as a receiver, and I don't think he's going to hold up Howard as a feature back. So I think they're going to be in the market for a complementary back anyway in this draft. But why not go for a special back in Robinson? And I think he would be productive really right away. Again, look at Canales and his influence with the Seahawks offense. And Walker was awesome as a rookie. So you'd see a lot of that, except Robinson would be the starter out of the gate. You won't have to worry about a Rashad Penny type situation with Rachaad White. So really like that for sure with Robinson. So Lions, Buccaneers, I think if he goes to either one of those teams as a top flight talent in this draft, he's going to end up as a strong RB1. Now we will tackle Jahmyr Gibbs. He's the second best running back in this class, another potential workhorse that could go in the first round. They're in our second segment here, Locked On Fantasy Football. They close the show on Friday. If you missed anything with our quarterback breakdown, check it out on our archives, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's Locked On Fantasy Football, your fantasy team every day. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Ultimate GM. It's an excellent game. Ultimate Football GM is a great mobile game app, and if you've ever thought you'd make a good GM for football, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get control and manage every strategic aspect of a team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory while trying to build a historic dynasty. Really, it's a lot of fun. We like to speculate what teams are going to be doing in the draft. We looked at free agency fits. Now we have some free agency answers. We have to also navigate through injuries and consider that, the salary cap, getting a team compliant. Well, it's a lot of fun to try to do that on our own. So really, you can get on it. You can make some good decisions and bad decisions too. I tend to want to keep too many players that I like and not move on for the upside. So that's something you can learn from and grow with your team. Talking about really a game that you can play anywhere. You don't need Wi-Fi to play. You can play it in app mode. Download the app and play today, Ultimate Football GM. With the game, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of regular seasons. All this in a challenging, realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free. You can play it offline, play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Fantasy Football listeners, good deal for you. You get a 100% free boost to their franchise there when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. That's right. You can do that to upgrade your franchise. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. So it's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, it's time to continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football and look at our number 2 running back on the board, Jahmyr Gibbs, 5'9", 199 pounds, out of Alabama. We know we've had some big-time producers, including Josh Jacobs, last year's leading rusher in the NFL, as well as scrimmage gainer. Gibbs is very good. He game breaks a little bit more than Bijan Robinson. Speed, quickness, explosiveness, a little bit more, not necessarily as good of a power back, but very compact. He can be very effective as a receiver as well. underrated power, I think. The burst to finish in the red zone is very strong. Again, 3-down back for sure when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, but he can also be used in the committee. So the two teams I circled later in the first round, number one, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They got 2 picks in the first round. They've got very frail Rashad Penny as their lead back to replace Miles Sanders. So you look at that. Kenneth Gainwell's okay. He's flashed a little bit. Boston Scott came back, but he's a very limited, smaller power back. But Gibbs would also fit when you look at the profile of Gainwell and Scott, more what they would like to do in running back here. Some explosiveness. Penny certainly has that. So the profile of Gibbs is kind of the profile of all their backs combined into one right now. So makes a lot of sense for the Eagles. We know they have that lead offensive line, even without Isaac Seumalo. He went to the Steelers. Still pretty solid up front here with the returning guys led by Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, the tackles, and of course Jason Kelce in the middle. So really a very good offensive line there to produce big time. Therefore, Gibbs, you can plug and play him as the starter, probably over the Penny situation. We know how that worked out with Kenneth Walker in Seattle last year. So really like the potential of Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, a little bit more game-breaking juice. They need that definitely in Philadelphia. And Miles Sanders reeled off some long runs as well, but this would also give them an option. They can stay on the field, be versatile for 3 downs. It doesn't hurt that they have an Alabama quarterback, and they can have a good mesh between Hurts and Gibbs here. So really like that. Eagles would be a very good spot for Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, another really good spot would be the Bills. And the Bills have been very interested in Gibbs. I know they have a backfield that's changing a little bit. Damian Harris is in there instead of Devon Singletary, who was signed with the Texans. So you have Damian Harris, but he's got a durability risk coming from New England. And then you look at James Cook, not bad, a good change of pace, but Jahmyr Gibbs, again, can do a lot of stuff that James Cook does. James Cook does. You have also the ability being a power back on early downs and being a better option for the Bills there than Damian Harris, who you can't trust to stay healthy. Interesting. Again, the Eagles, with Penny and his durability issues, the Bills took a flyer on Harris, who hasn't been able to stay healthy. So makes sense for either of those teams to target this complete back. The Eagles, for obvious reasons, they're a run-heavy, run-effective team with Hurts and their offensive line. The Bills want to get better in that capacity, also don't want to lose much in the passing game. Jahmyr Gibbs would give them that, and chance to finish a lot with an explosive offense with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and company. So either spot, elite offense, teams that play with leads, teams that have pretty good defenses, a guy that can close, Gibbs would be ideal in either scenario. Now we will close the show with the 8 backs that round out my top 10. We'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football, but very excited about the prospects of Robinson, Gibbs, 2 guys I'm looking at right away. Robinson, I feel like he's already an RB1 status type guy. Jahmyr Gibbs is RB2 with a bullet with a chance to finish in the top 12 or 14 for sure, no matter where he lands. All right, we told you that the official betting partner here of Locked On is FanDuel, and it's also the official betting partner of the NBA as well as the NFL. NBA playoffs are almost here. Perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use for anyone. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores to threes drained. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the big markets. We'll see what happens with Golden State here as they push forward and try to repeat. A lot of good stuff here for you to pick from. Player props as well are always available. Points, rebounds, assists, steals. You can look at all that. There's so many exclusive bets there you can check out, like the 2x3, 2 3-pointer scored in the first 3 minutes. Plus, FanDuel lets you even continue to combine your bets for a chance at even bigger payout with the same game parlay. Love playing those there with the points on a team and a player. Love it. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more. It's FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, it's time to close the show. We'll go a little bit more rapid fashion here. These are the backs that I have ranked 3 through 10 at sportingnews.com on the big board. Devon Achane, out of Texas A&M is number 3. Speed, quickness, that change of pace back, can catch a lot of passes, be very versatile. I do think he would be good fit with the Titans, the Dontrell Hilliard type. If they start to fade with Derrick Henry for a while, they need a little bit reliable backup as well. So Achane could be a plus handcuff with some standalone value in the pass game. That type of player. I think he just needs to be complementary change of pace that gets involved there in the passing game. But the Titans are pretty good appealing landing spot there. So now when you look at the number 4 running back, this guy kind of rose up draft boards. We had to examine him more when Texas had the pro day and Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, that is. A big power back, 6'0", 219 pounds, very solid, classic power back, can hammer in with every team. Now, the Bills, if they don't land Jahmyr Gibbs and he ends up with the Eagles, this would be a good fit for them because James Cook's pass catching ability, Johnson could score a lot of touchdowns. You also see Lions potentially looking at him as well, but you just want him in position to score quite a bit, and he could be definitely another Williams or Singletary here for these teams. But I do right now like him in the second round of the Bills. I think that's how good he could be end of second round, early third round pick here for Roschon Johnson. All right, next up is Tank Bigsby out of Auburn, another power runner, very good player. Game breaking as well, so power runner that can hit home runs, a little bit Miles Sanders-y. So you look at the Falcons, Tyler Algier is a pretty good back, but I think he needs a complement here. Cordell Patterson is getting up there and could wear down a little bit, but could be in a good grouping with a run-heavy team in a complementary role here. Could also potentially look at him in Washington if they want to go that way and just kind of pivot away from Antonio Gibson even more here. You could also fit well with the Cowboys, where Tony Pollard is a lead kind of back now as a receiving back, but they need to replace Ezekiel Elliott to finish in the red zone. So Tank Bigsby can do a lot of that for Dallas. All right, the next running back on the board for me is Zach Charbonnet. So a few Zachs to look at here. 6'0", 214. He was at Michigan. He's a very versatile power runner. He can go into different schemes. He's also very good at just kind of breaking through yards after contract. He could be a guy that the Titans look at as a successor, stash him behind Derrick Henry. But I also like him maybe in Seattle as a backup to Kenneth Walker because they're really thin at running back, and that would be a nice handcuff there to look at. So he's kind of that type of player. So think about Walker from last year. I think Charbonnet has the type of ways to produce in the same way. So when you look at that, I look at Charbonnet just having a solid option here, at least as a strong number 2 wherever he lands. Zach Evans, we have some rumors about Austin Eckler. He's having a hard time finding trade partners, but Zach Evans is a lot like Austin Eckler, a little bit bigger, 5'11", 202. Can be receiving specialist there. He could get better in that capacity. There didn't do a lot in college in that, but speedy, quick, a little bit fast, not the power back type, but the change of pace classic. So Zach Evans right now going to the Chargers would make a lot of sense there to be the swing backup for Austin Eckler. Now, Tavion Thomas is also pretty good here. I think the Bears could look at him for sure with Khalil Herbert being their number 2, slightly different offensive approach here with Donta Foreman in the mix. I think Tavion Thomas can be a lot better than Foreman. Foreman has the durability issues, can't stay on the field here. So Tavion Thomas very productive at Utah, 6'0", 237. A little bit of a beefier power back than what we saw with Charbonnet and Johnson, but it definitely can get the job done in a lot of places. Now, this is a pretty good fit for my number 9 running back. It is Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a very strong tradition of running backs. We know going back to Adrian Peterson, we've had Joe Mixon. So a lot of valuable backs out of the Sooners system for sure. We had Ramondre Stevenson of late breakout for the Patriots. And it's a different system. It's been evolving. But Eric Gray is a classic kind of change of pace, 5'9", 207. Again, they have a good pipeline, but I think he's underrated as a power runner, much like Ramondre Stevenson was. And I do see there's some Stevenson similarities in Eric Gray. So this is interesting. I think he could be like Kareem Hunt, a little bit receiving back that gives you a little bit of punch in the running game when you're looking for it. Where does that make him a good fit to replace Kareem Hunt with the Browns in the 4th round or so? There they do have Nick Chubb, but they lost Dearness Johnson as well to the Jaguars in free agency. So Eric Gray would make a lot of sense to replenish some of that backfield depth in Cleveland. So I do like Eric Gray quite a bit here at number 9, here to be very active and really help a team in the pass game. So it would make perfect sense if Gray is paired with Nick Chubb, and that would be really good because we know the Browns have an elite offensive line. They can now sling it a little bit more downfield, open the offense with Deshaun Watson. So that also helps the running game here. So a lot of good stuff to look at in Eric Gray, a running back out of Oklahoma. Finally, this guy has been a little bit polarizing. Ty J. Spears out of Tulane, 5'10", 201. high upside to be a game breaker, just a quick diminutive dasher, can get used in the passing game as well. I have him as a parallel to Alvin Kamara, and Kamara with his off-field issues. I don't know if that's going to be rendering its ugly head at some point. He's going to miss time, but I think that's a good stash for the Saints. Kamara is also getting a little bit older here, so makes sense. You have Jamal Williams for the power game. Spears out of Tulane right there in their backyard of the Saints, and have that opportunity to look at a running back that has a similar Kamara vein. So anybody looking for that scat back, receiving back, again, he could also be in play for the Commanders if they want to move on from Antonio Gibson in that capacity. So if a team is just stuck with a downfield running game and needs a little bit of juice, maybe he also fits behind Joe Mixon now as a replacement to Samaje Perine. And we know Mixon, there's some iffiness about his future in Cincinnati going forward if they're going to cut with him with his value there. So pretty darn good class of running backs. It always is. There's a lot of supply of this position. That's why you don't see a lot of demand for veterans. So quickly going down, I like Bijan Robinson landing with the Lions or Bucks for his maximum value. I like Jahmyr Gibbs ending with the Eagles or Bills. And then the rest just have to find their niche here, either as a power back or a complementary receiving back. Got to fit in the systems where they're going to get those opportunities over other players, or to complement or supplement other players here as well. So there you have it. There's a breakdown of my top 10 running backs and their best fantasy fits potentially here in the 2023 NFL Draft. That means wide receivers is on deck. We'll tackle that on the next show, barring any breaking news for you here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today, every day. Now, again, wait for those wide receiver breakdowns next time. Now, make your second listen, Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft dudes from NFL free agency to the draft, salary cap management, more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft dudes wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Just like this show, we're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Vinnie Iyer, for myself, for Locked On Fantasy Football, have a great weekend. Enjoy that. If you missed any of the shows breaking down things we did this week, check it out. It's all in our archive, and we'll catch you on the flip side on Monday.